Emily loved a good scare. Thrillers, horror movies, ghost stories, she devoured them all. She craved the adrenaline rush, the delicious shiver down her spine. Little did she know, her own life was about to become a chilling tale.
I always believed that real fear was something you experienced, not just read about.
She was about to learn a harsh lesson. The line between fantasy and reality was about to blur, and she was caught in the middle. Her new apartment on Madison Lane seemed like the perfect place. The street was lined with trees, their leaves rustling gently in the breeze, creating a serene and welcoming atmosphere. The building itself had a certain charm, with its vintage architecture and quaint details that spoke of a bygone era. An old building with character, nestled on a quiet street. It was charming. The wrought iron fence, though slightly rusted, added to the building's allure. The peeling paint on the walls told stories of years gone by, of lives lived within its walls. It was a place with history, a place that felt alive. The rent was a steal, too good to pass up. It was almost unbelievable, considering the location and the charm of the place. She signed the lease with a sense of excitement and anticipation, holding the keys to her new home with a smile that couldn't be contained.
I had a nagging feeling in my gut, telling me it was too good to be true. There was something about the place that felt off, a sense of unease that I couldn't shake. As I unpacked my things, the feeling only grew stronger, gnawing at the back of my mind.
The air inside the apartment was heavy, thick with the scent of dust and time. It was as if the place had been forgotten, left to gather dust and memories. The wooden floors creaked underfoot, and the furniture, though beautiful, was covered in a fine layer of dust that seemed to cling to everything. It felt strangely cold, even on a warm day, but Emily was determined to make it her own, to turn it into a cozy haven. She adjusted the thermostat, hoping to bring some warmth into the space, but the chill persisted, a constant reminder of the apartment's age and history. She unpacked her boxes, her excitement growing with each picture frame and trinket she placed on the shelves. Each item found its place, turning the empty rooms into a reflection of her personality and style. The apartment began to feel more like home, a place where she could create new memories and build a future. Despite the initial unease, Emily's determination and optimism shone through, transforming the old apartment on Madison Lane into a warm and inviting sanctuary. The first few nights were uneventful. Emily slept soundly, lulled by the unfamiliar silence of her new home. Then, the whispers began. Soft, indistinct murmurs that seemed to drift from the walls themselves.
At first, I dismissed them as creaky pipes or the sounds of the old building settling.
But the whispers persisted, growing louder each night. They seemed to follow her, circling her like a predator stalking its prey. Fear, cold and sharp, began to prick at the edges of her confidence. The stories she loved so much were starting to feel a little too real. The whispers were just the beginning. Objects began to move on their own. Doors creaked open and slammed shut. Shadows danced in the corners of her vision, disappearing when she turned to face them.
One evening, as I sat reading, a book flew off the shelf, landing at my feet with a loud thud.
Her heart hammered in her chest. She was no longer dealing with harmless noises. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. The playful thrill of her horror stories was gone, replaced by a chilling dread that clung to her like a shroud. Then came the notes. They arrived without warning, without any discernible pattern, and always when least expected. Short, cryptic messages scrawled on scraps of paper, their meanings elusive and haunting, appearing in impossible places, tucked into her purse, left on her pillow, as if they materialized out of thin air, even pinned to the refrigerator door, where they seemed to mock her with their presence.
Each note sent a fresh wave of terror through me, a cold shiver that ran down my spine and left me paralyzed with fear.
You are not alone. The words were simple, yet they carried a weight that was unbearable. Leave while you still can. The urgency in the message was palpable, a dire warning that couldn't be ignored. We've been waiting for you. The anticipation in those words was chilling, as if something sinister was lurking just out of sight. The messages were chilling, devoid of any sender, any explanation. They were like pieces of a puzzle that didn't fit together. They were like whispers from a void, pronouncements from an unseen entity. Each note felt like a piece of a larger, more terrifying narrative.
The fear that had been a constant companion now morphed into something deeper, more insidious, paranoia. I felt eyes on me at all times, an invisible presence that never left. I was being watched, toyed with, but by what? The uncertainty was maddening, a relentless torment that gnawed at my sanity. Every creak, every shadow became a potential threat, a reminder that I was never truly alone.
One night, the terror reached its peak. The air was thick with an unsettling silence, the kind that makes your skin crawl and your heart race. The moonlight barely penetrated the heavy clouds, casting eerie shadows that danced on the walls. Emily woke to a cold draft, the distinct feeling of being watched. The chill seemed to seep into her bones, making her shiver uncontrollably. She could feel the hairs on the back of her neck stand up, a primal instinct warning her of danger. She sat up in bed, her breath catching in her throat. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for the source of her unease. The darkness seemed to close in on her, suffocating and oppressive.
There, at the foot of my bed, stood a figure. It was more than just a shadow. It was a presence, a malevolent force that seemed to suck the warmth and light from the room.
It was tall and skeletal, shrouded in darkness. Its form was barely discernible, a twisted silhouette that seemed to shift and waver as if it were made of smoke. Its eyes glowed with an eerie light, piercing the gloom like burning embers. They seemed to bore into her soul, filling her with a dread so profound it was almost tangible. Emily was paralyzed with fear, unable to scream, unable to move. Her mind raced, but her body refused to obey. She felt as if she were trapped in a nightmare, one from which she could not wake.
The figure glided closer, its cold, deathly presence washing over me. I could feel its icy breath on my skin, a chilling reminder of my own mortality. It was as if the very essence of death had come to claim me. Just as I thought I would faint from terror, it vanished as quickly and silently as it had appeared. The room was left in an eerie stillness, the only sound the pounding of my heart. I was left to wonder if it had all been a terrible dream, or if the figure in the darkness would return. That was the final straw.
Emily fled her apartment in the dead of night, leaving behind all her belongings. She couldn't stay another minute in that place, not with whatever haunted its halls. She found a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, seeking solace in the harsh glare of the neon sign and the anonymity of the crowd. But the terror followed her. It lingered in the shadows, whispered in the rustling leaves, haunted her dreams.
The experience on Madison Lane left an indelible mark on me.
She was no longer the fearless girl who devoured horror stories. The line between reality and fantasy had been irrevocably blurred. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was still being watched, that the entity from the apartment was still with her, lurking just beyond the veil of reality. The fear was a constant companion, a shadow that followed her wherever she went.
Every creak of the floorboard, every whisper of the wind, sent shivers down my spine.
She jumped at shadows, flinched at sudden noises. The world, once a place of wonder and excitement, now seemed filled with unseen dangers. Emily tried to move on, to rebuild her life. But the haunting on Madison Lane had changed her. She was haunted not just by the memories, but by the lingering feeling that the nightmare wasn't truly over.
The experience left me with a profound sense of unease. a chilling premonition that the darkness I had encountered was still out there, waiting.
Waiting for her, perhaps, or for someone else to cross its path. The haunting of Madison Lane was over, but the terror lived on. The question wasn't whether the haunting was real, but what would happen next. The darkness had been unleashed, and its grip on Emily, on reality itself, remained.